So as I said, it's over at PFF.com. We're going to try. Should we put a time limit on our QB discussion here? How are we going to do that?
Yeah, I don't think it'll take too long. We can certainly get through the first pick or two reasonably quickly. Then there's probably a discussion.
All right, we're allowed to discuss. All right, starting right at the top, the Carolina Panthers. We've seen Bryce Young. We've seen CJ Stroud. But Sam, your number one overall pick for the Carolina Panthers is?
I went with Anthony Richardson. Now, that's
what you would do.
Yeah, that flies in the face of everything I've been saying so far this draft process.
That's
which
great.
Is
You're already contradicting yourself.
Bryce Young is the best quarterback prospect in this draft. I still believe that to be true. I think Bryce Young is the best prospect of this draft. However, where the context matters is that Carolina has made this big swing. They've already traded from number 9 to number 1. They need to swing for the fences. And as much as I think Young is the best prospect, I think Richardson is the biggest swing. Like, he's the potential home run. He is the guy that I think probably does have the highest ceiling. My concern with Bryce Young, I think he's the best quarterback. But the size thing, I don't think it's going to stop him being a good NFL player. I do, however, have at least a worry or a concern, or the potential is there that it stops him being a great one. Like we've seen already, quarterbacks, very short quarterbacks, and it's a very small sample size. Very short quarterbacks, we're probably talking about 2, Kyler Murray and Baker Mayfield. Drew Brees is 6 foot. That doesn't count. If you're 5'10", it's a different world than 6 foot when you're talking about trying to see over or see between giant 6'5" behemoths in front of you. So you're probably talking about those 2 guys, and those 2 guys have had issues playing the game in a conventional manner. They have to do it in a different way. And I just, the Kyler Murray seems to have hit a plateau and now declined. Russell Wilson, for his entire career, basically, no matter how well he was playing, it's like, why have we not, where's the extra couple of percent that we think is there? And we thought it was the coaching, and it turns out the coaching might have been the only thing propping him up to where he was. So my only concern is, are we limited to a good NFL quarterback with Bryce Young? And if he becomes a good NFL quarterback, is that enough given where Carolina traded from and what they want to achieve here? If you take a swing at Richardson and you fix his accuracy, there is this Josh Allen's it's like comparing people to Aaron Donald. It's kind of unfair because he's a one of one sort of reclamation project. But if you do manage to get his mechanics working and get him 10% more accurate, you have created something that is unparalleled in the NFL in terms of potential. I think that's worth the swing. People will forgive that, Whereas if you draft Bryce Young, you get a capable starter, but it's not enough to take you where you want to go. You're going to get fired anyway. So what the hell? If you're going to get fired when you screw it up, swing for the fences.
So as GM of the Panthers, who has just traded up, right? You're sitting in that seat. You're saying, even though I like Bryce Young better, you do buy into this Anthony Richardson's potential's higher. You're buying into that.
I wouldn't if I didn't think he was a capable quarterback in terms of reading defenses, going through a progression, working a pocket. I think he's good at that stuff. He's just inaccurate. And I think when you're that inaccurate, it probably is a mechanical problem with your motion, which we've already seen can be addressed with private coaching, with whatever. I think there's a world where Richardson can get significantly more accurate.
The athleticism that Richardson shows in the pocket makes me think it's possible. He's just really athletic. When it looks right, it's good. I'm going to I contradict myself too when people are like, this guy has good mechanics, he's just inaccurate. It's like, well, the whole point of mechanics is to be accurate and to throw with proper velocity. That's not good mechanics. But when it looks right, I could see Richardson figuring it out a little bit more. The other thing too, it's not just, as we've said, fixing the accuracy. It's the other stuff that Richardson brings to the table mitigates the lack of accuracy, right? Creates more open throws in the whole deal. So you're going Richardson.
Yeah.
Number 1 for the Panthers. And that puts Bryce Young at number 2. Is that right?
Yes.
For the Texans?
Yeah. At that point where you've passed on, when Richardson has been taken, you've passed on Bryce Young. For the Texans, Bryce Young is the slam dunk answer because Richardson is a home run swing. Might not work out, but I think it's the biggest payoff potential. And After that, I think Bryce Young is just clearly the best quarterback prospect. So that becomes a no-brainer. Houston takes by far the best prospect.
As much as we've talked about Bryce Young at 1, and so it's pretty well divided here. The NFL always does a good job of keeping us in suspense as to who the number 1 overall pick is going to be. There are some people that think it's CJ Stroud. There are some people that think it's Bryce Young. But there's a realistic enough chance that the Texans will have their option of Bryce Young. We'll be able to take him if they want. I would love to see Bryce Young in that offense with our friend Bobby, with the Shanahan scheme and all that stuff. I could see Bryce Young succeeding in a Shanahan tree, right?
Sure.
So this is a realistic option, even though you and I have always said, we think Bryce Young's the best quarterback. We think that's where the Panthers should lean. By the way, going back to the Richardson thing, a few weeks ago, I remember there was Thomas Davis saying he thinks there are people in the building that love Anthony Richardson and everything. I don't know if it ends up potentially happening, but technically it's still on the table. And these are Sam's picks. These are your picks right now. One thing I need to correct you on, Russell Wilson was a high-end quarterback. I don't think Russell Wilson had a limited ceiling. He hit a pretty high ceiling.
He was high-end, but there was always a feeling of there's more. He never got into that echelon of, for the period where he was at his best, it was, Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees. He never hit that category.
No, but that's not a height thing. That's Matt Ryan has the same thing. Like Matt Ryan never got into that category. Big Ben never got into that category.
I mean, Roethlisberger maybe got there a season or two. Matt Ryan got there in a season. How do you know it wasn't a height thing?
Because there's other quarterbacks without a height issue. Dak Prescott's never gotten there, right? It's the same.
But those are not. That's not a reason it isn't. That the fact that
it's not a reason it is.
I didn't ever say it was, but Russell Wilson has always played the game in a way that is different from all those other guys, and there has always been a feeling that there was more potential there than was realized. And for years, that was explained away as, well, the Seahawks just aren't letting Russ cook. That's the problem here. And we cycled through a bunch of offense coordinators trying to get the one that could unlock the final 5% to turn him into the quarterback that we believe he is. And then eventually that stopped happening. They got rid of him, and then he was terrible last year. So right now it looks like the limiting factor has been Russell Wilson rather than the other issues.
Yeah, maybe. We don't have time for this. Agree to disagree. That's like saying 10 years later, scouts knew Antonio Brown was a problem.
I mean, I don't
think
it is.
Showed up 10 years into his career.
I think it's just simply saying that the limiting factor on Russell Wilson has been Russell Wilson. That part, I think, is becoming fairly inarguable. And then the question is, was it height related? And we know he's always targeted the middle of the field differently.
Yeah, there are definitely height related limitations to Russell Wilson's game. That part's fair.
Okay.
All right. What's happening now? We've got Anthony Richardson. We have Bryce Young. What's next?
So 2 quarterbacks gone, number 1, 2. Now you have the Colts sitting there at 4. Arizona's at 3. They don't want to take they're obviously not taking a quarterback. They don't really want to sit there at 3 and take a defensive player. They want to trade back. Problem for them is the only person really interested in trading at this point was Indianapolis, who just don't want to get left with the last quarterback on the shelf, the last turkey in the shop. So the Colts are the only offer on the table. They jump up from 4 to 3 just to secure their guy. And their guy in this situation is Will Levis. Now,
Colts are coming up to get Will Levis.
Number 1, this is what I would do. But number 2, they also sent the entire farm to go watch Will Levis at his pro day. Now, you could argue that's because it's quite a short trip.
It's a short trip.
Reasonable. But they sent a lot of people to Will Levis's pro day. Kind of like you're getting the same kind of vibes that people got from Carolina at CJ Stroud's pro day, where everyone's happy, everyone's loving life.
Better handshakes. They had better handshakes.
Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, we've had this conversation many times. I think he's a better quarterback prospect. His last season was bad. The year before that, though, with a better supporting cast and a better offense and an NFL system, that's where you started to see real NFL potential in Will Levis. And I think that situation in Indianapolis makes sense for him. So the Colts jumping up 1 spot is entirely reasonable. I mean, we've seen that several times in the past where teams have jumped 1 spot ahead just to make sure they get their guy. To be fair, the last time I can think of, it didn't go well because the Bears got Trubisky. But it happens. You know what I mean? So the idea here, if you're the Colts, you're going to go from 4 to 3
just to make sure that a team like the Falcons, the Raiders, the Titans, who have been rumored to go to 3 in your division,
just to
you want to
stop you
make sure
getting
that no one else is trading up.
Yep. You just don't want to get jumped and be left with QB4 who might not be your guy. So you jump up, and for Arizona, they'll take any deal that's on the table. And if this is the best one that's on the table, this is the one they take.
And this is in line with your QB rankings, other than, the Bryce Young, Anthony Richardson, those guys going out of order. But you do like, of the 2 left on the board, you do like Will Levis better than CJ Stroud.
Yeah. So most of the time, you'll see these picks fall in line with my rankings, but there are some times where I think the situation or the circumstances around it, like Carolina, makes sense to go against the rankings to shoot for greater potential or better fit in a system or whatever it is.
Risk appetite.
Yeah.
As I've
I mean,
said.
that's
different
that,
risk appetite.
Risk appetite or, scheme fit or whatever it is.
So you're going Levis at 3 now. Colts have traded up. Cardinals trade down 1. I think this is a no-brainer for the Cardinals. This is what you want. Trade down and still get Will Anderson.
I think the Cardinals would love to trade further if there was a deal on the table. If they can only get down 1 spot, they pick up an extra pick here and they still get Will Anderson. It's free money. It's a profit. So they grab Will Anderson at number 4. No-brainer. This is as simple as the Bryce Young at 2 deal. You run the card in.
So this is where it kind of like falls in line a little bit. We've talked a little bit about Arizona and Will Anderson. I think Will Anderson's the best prospect in this draft for non-quarterbacks. I think that is the safest, not only the safest play, but the best play for Arizona. And then you do something else that I think I probably did last week. Seattle Seahawks taking Jalen Carter, interior defensive lineman for Georgia. So he's going to Seattle at 5. So those back-to-back picks, those are the 2 guys along the defensive line that we've said, hey, those are the 2 best players. It's not a blue chip heavy draft. Assuming Jalen Carter checks out ticks all the boxes off the field, you're getting the other blue chip defensive player here. If you're Seattle.
That's the thing. That's the question. Like, you can make a very good argument that Jalen Carter on a big board that's just looking at football ability is the number 1 player in this entire draft. So it's all down to your guys doing background. It's all the stuff we don't have access to. How he's doing in the meeting room, what happens when you talk to him, what are your guys giving you in background in terms of, researching his entire life in Georgia, all this kind of stuff. Like, if that checks out, and who the hell knows from this seat, then you draft him. You draft him and you're happy because he's arguably the best player in the entire draft. If it doesn't, you take him off your board or you don't touch him for like a round or 2 or whatever. But these are, you have to assume at some point when you're doing a mock draft, like, I don't know, let's say it checks out.
Let's pretend it checks out. So there is a real world scenario where Jalen Carter drops. Remember Laramie Tunsil a few years back was going to go probably top 5. He's got the gas mask video, comes out right before the draft. What a crazy night that was.
Yes.
That was my first night, I think, live blogging the draft, really getting into it, and it's like, oh my gosh, what's going on here?
There was the Tunsil thing that broke just before the draft. There was the Lyle Collins thing where he's all of a sudden a person of interest in a murder inquiry.
That's right.
Right before the draft, and then he slips so far
out of the draft.
Well, he slipped so far that his own camp, his agents are like, don't draft him now. We don't want it. Don't touch him. We will not sign for anyone that drafts us. We now want the ability to go choose our destination. I said at the time the Carter thing happened, one of the big differences between those situations and this one is the time span involved. This was going to have weeks to work its way out, and he's already resolved the thing. Did you see that? I didn't even notice that until the other day. He's already pled guilty to, or pled no contest, I think, to the misdemeanors, paid his fine. We're done. We've already settled this legal issue. So that part has had the time. It's already worked its way through the process. Now there's other stuff in a pro day workout that was apparently crap. There's talk that he won't even talk to teams, won't go to a visit outside of the top 10 because he knows he's going in the top 10. This has not been the cleanest pre-draft
process. That part's ridiculous because it's those teams can trade up into the top 10. Anyway, the point I was going to make is there is a realistic chance Jalen Carter is there at 10 or 15. There might be teams that don't want to touch him, but in this case, you're taking him at 5 for the Seattle Seahawks. I meant to follow up and say, what's it like? So when you were the GM of the Colts a couple picks ago, what's it like working for Jim Irsay? What was your interview like? How'd you secure the seat with Jim?
I whooped his ass on Madden. It was great fun.
Yeah.
12-hour Madden session. Just owned him.
Just franchise mode? You just talk about just go through all your offseason moves?
Well, no, as we said, he plays the 2004 Colts.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I got stuck with the current roster.
If it's 04, you should grab Vic. You got to grab 04 Vic. Play with him, just run around and, you know, cheat the game, man. That's what kids did back then. Anyway, we're up to pick number 6.
Flying.
So, we are. Detroit Lions are on the clock, Sam.
Yeah, you'd think. Not in this
I
mock.
would think that's who has the pick.
Yeah.
At number 6.
Not in my mock, sir.
What has happened?
Well,
what's going on?
With 3 quarterbacks off the board and with the surprise of CJ Stroud being the guy to fall as opposed to being taken number 1 overall, all of a sudden QB-needy teams are interested. And one particular QB-needy team, the Tennessee Titans, decides to put a package together, jump from number 11 all the way to number 6. Detroit is only too happy to trade down at this spot. And the Tennessee Titans draft CJ Stroud as their quarterback of the future.
Wow. Did you put the package together? Did you just
I did.
know what happens?
I don't remember 100% what it was. But
so Tennessee's at 11.
So what I did is when I made these trades, I used a couple of different charts. I made sure that they checked out and put them together and then didn't record them.
I trust you.
Because people will whinge. People will complain. Whatever it is.
That'll never happen.
The trade is unreasonable. This is way too much. This is way too little. So I just kind of made sure it was feasible and then decided to keep it behind closed doors under wraps.
The people who whinge, your words, at mock drafts, do they do the same thing on draft night?
Probably.
Because on draft night...
This would never happen.
Draft night looks like the worst mock ever. Like, I never expected this guy to go to 10. This guy will never go at 10. Yeah. I can't wait. We're going to do our draft bets show. Should we do that? Do you want to do that tomorrow?
Yeah. Do that. Yes.
Okay, so tomorrow we'll tweet. We got to do a lot of social mediaing here to make sure people are ready.
Well,
buy us some extra time for evals.
Eli's on the case already.
Tell the people we're going to take all of your draft bets, and but the draft bets need to be very definitive, not like this guy's definitely not going to the Bengals or something like that. You know what I mean?
And in particular,
it's got to be this guy will not drop out of the top 10. This guy's definitely going in the top 10. This guy's definitely a first rounder. This guy's not, whatever it is.
And the best of these, remember, are things to call us out for being crazy about certain things, right? Like the Tyree Wilson thing. And
I'm willing to change this a little bit. So I think it's not so much what do we feel strongly about, because we're not into predicting the draft.
Right.
I'm willing to just take strong stances, even if I agree with them. Like if someone's like, hey, I'm with you guys, Tyree Wilson is falling out of the top 15, I might say, you put your name on the line, I'm in agreement. It's not so much a bet, it's like, we'll put a PFF plus on the line for that person that takes a strong stance.
Yeah.
Strong stances that come true on draft night.
Contact us. NFLpodcast@pff.com is the email to send in. We have a spreadsheet already that we can, I think, duplicate and create the draft version of it. What your strong takes for the draft, things that would never happen or things that will absolutely happen. Throw out the bets. We will select the best ones on tomorrow's show. And then we'll all have a little bit of skin in the game.
All right, so we just did our cornerback rankings.
I do like the imagery, by the way, though, of these people just sitting there like, what's the doon trade, the whatever is trade, and people just screaming at the TV. That would never happen.
That would never happen.
It's literally happening right
never.
now. It's in front of you. It's occurring.
Lance Zierlein, you idiot. That'll never happen on draft night. Come on. All right, so the Titans trade up.
Yeah.
From 11 to 6. For CJ Stroud.
Yeah, so so
you like Stroud now?
There's 3 trades in this draft. Spoiler alert, one of them's upcoming. But there are 3 trades, and they're all, I think, opportunistic trades, which I think is where you're going to see the ones on draft night take place. They're not necessarily pre-planned. We're going to jump from here to here to get this to happen. It's the draft is unfolding in a certain way that wasn't necessarily anticipated, and that's what's going to spur action. So for Tennessee, I don't think they would have had any realistic expectation heading into this that CJ Stroud would be there available as low as 6. And if that's their guy, boom, they're gonna jump. So Tennessee's jumping up to 6 to grab CJ Stroud.
So if you're Detroit, you're obviously adding a few extra picks. We just mentioned in our mind, I think you and I both agree, Will Anderson, Jalen Carter, we'll call those blue chip defensive players. You and I both have Devin Witherspoon as our top corner. Just had our cornerback rankings show last week.
I'm actually, by the way, now I'm willing to push him into that conversation of blue chip. I think Witherspoon is now, along with Anderson and Carter, a blue chip defensive prospect.
Okay, so we're talking about 3 blue chips and 4 quarterbacks, right? Like that's like your top 7.
And a blue chip running back, which doesn't count the same.
No, it doesn't. No other blue chip offensive players, we'll say. So if you're Detroit, you're going through this, right? You're willing to take those extra picks. You're okay with the drop-off because Devin Witherspoon would be a great pick. We've all mocked him to Detroit at 6.
Yeah.
You're willing to give up Devin Witherspoon, drop down to 11. Maybe it's the other corners or whoever else you're looking at 11. You're okay to give that up. There's going to be extra picks involved. I'm assuming it's like a second or a third, right?
I think Tennessee. They picked up a couple of extra picks here.
Yeah.
I can't remember. Definitely a second. There's another pick involved as well. They get a reasonable haul to make this happen. I think because of that, you're not loving the value at 6 for a corner, Devin Witherspoon at 6, though I think it's fine. I think you're willing to give that up and play the board, like just see how things work. The work you did in free agency means you don't need to chase that value and go, no, we have to get our guy here at 6. You can wait. And if you can wait and pick up extra picks along the way, perfect.
Well done by the Lions. I mean, you did a great job with the Lions here in this draft.
Oh, people are going to hate it. Yeah.
We'll see. We'll see when we get there. Now, so that's from a Lions perspective. From a Titans perspective, moving from 11 to 6, we've talked a little bit on our show about maybe it's overhaul time, right? It's kind of like let's reset this roster. They did elements of that this offseason. Taylor Lewan's been released and Robert Woods, and they're starting to reset. Ben Jones.
They've had their finger hovering over the reset button for the whole offseason. It's like, do I push it? They hit it. They mashed the button with this pick, like this trade. They finally go, oh, look, CJ Stroud's available. Bam, hammer on the reset button. This is the franchise reset that happens. Then they start making some more moves. They probably try and trade away a couple of guys, but they finally mash the reset button with this move.
So they're willing to give up those extra picks in a rebuild situation to go get their quarterback. They're going to get CJ Stroud. And as the Titans GM that you've just stepped in, as the Titans GM, you're like, of course. I watched the Georgia game. I'm in on CJ Stroud. He's the guy for Tennessee. What are we going to try to trade Ryan Tannehill here? See what
trade or release
the market looks like?
I mean, at this point everything's available on the roster. You know, we're going to identify a couple of key spots that we need to keep intact for the future, and so that the quarterback has somebody to throw to. But after that, everything's available.
All right. How do you feel about Stroud? He's QB4 here. Give people the Cliff Notes versions on Stroud. Your thoughts on him? I have him kind of tied with Anthony Richardson as my 2A, 2B in my quarterback rankings. You have Stroud lower. Why is that? But why do you still have him as a guy that you would take in the top 6?
I still don't love him, but I'm warming to Stroud the longer the process goes. I still have huge concerns about his play under pressure, his play outside of structure, the fact that offense doesn't ask him to do a whole lot relative to some other guys. There's a lot of issues, I think, with his game, all of which were answered in the Georgia game, but one game, you know? And other people will weigh that game really highly. I tend to weigh the bigger sample size more highly, particularly when the deficiencies in the large sample size come against weaker opposition. That, to me, is almost more instructive than the good coming against the best opposition. So I have concerns, but he's incredibly accurate. I think he is smart and can read a defense. I think the athleticism has been underplayed, actually, in the process. And within this Titans offense, they might lean on that a lot more early in his career. And actually, you can kind of prop him up a little while we figure out if he can develop as a passing quarterback and be the full breadth of what he needs to be. So I don't love him as a prospect, but I am warming to his ability the further we go. And I think for Tennessee, at this point, you know, pick a number 11 to start with. You get up to 6. I think it's worth doing.
All right, so there's a big move in the draft. Titans move up to number 6. Lions move down. We'll get to their pick in a minute. But the Raiders are now on the clock at 7. Where are you going with the Raiders? All 4 quarterbacks off the board. I know if you were Raiders GM, you'd be looking at quarterback. You're not a Jimmy Garoppolo believer. But at the same time, you just signed him, right?
Yeah, and by the way, the reason I would do this as opposed to Tennessee will do that is I don't think the Titans are going to be bad enough next year to be in with a shot of Caleb Williams, Drake May, Like, this is as close as they're going to get to finding the next franchise quarterback in this, like, will we, won't we reset type of mode. I think this is the chance that they didn't really think they had a shot at. So I don't love Stroud, but if he falls to 6 and you're Tennessee, I'm willing to take that shot and go get him and hope that that is good enough for the reset.
And that puts the Raiders on the clock at number 7. Where are you going with the Raiders here?
So the Raiders, I was convinced by your argument that they are less desperate for a quarterback since they have Jimmy Garoppolo and the 11 games of a healthy Jimmy G they're going to get this year.
Wow.
So they're not as desperate as some of these other teams that might have moved. They're going to stay there. To which point I take the blue chip, and there's one left on the defensive side, since the running back doesn't count. Devin Witherspoon. I have been convinced with his 4.40 at his pro day that he is in the category of blue chip defensive playmaker. He might not be as good as Sauce Gardner, but he's pretty close.
So you're going Witherspoon here for the Raiders. I like that. I mean, I think if the Raiders are going to be out at quarterback, they're going to be an interesting team for if Witherspoon is available there, or on the Jalen Carter drop, right? If Jalen Carter drops, the Raiders just need so much talent on the defensive side of the ball. Mm-hmm. Remember a couple years ago when Mike Mayock got in there and John Gruden got in there? It was like year 2, and they said, we need playmakers on defense. They still do.
Yeah.
Years later, they still need playmakers on defense other than Max Crosby.
It's because they missed on basically every first-round draft pick they had.
Yeah, so I mean, they're still in that same boat where the Raiders. I think they can run just their offense can run perfectly fine, right? They've got playmakers.
That offense looks like
receivers. They have Garoppolo now, Josh McDaniels. They have what should be a decent offense. Their whole defense, other than Max Crosby, is up in the air. A couple players here and there, but I mean, it's really up in the air. So adding Devin Witherspoon would be great. I think they'll consider the Jalen Carter stuff if he drops. So I like this for the Raiders. I think this is not best case scenario, but pretty close, I think, for the Raiders to get the top cornerback here at 7.
Yeah, the Raiders' offense, I think, could actually be pretty decent. I like the playmakers that they have. I like the overall. I think the offensive line is solid. If Jimmy G stays healthy, then it could be good. Their defense is a mess. Like that, they need everything. I mean, they're one of the worst defenses from a personnel standpoint in the NFL. So anything you can add to the defense, I think, makes sense. And as I said, Witherspoon, I think, is in this blue chip category of player. That guy allowed a passer rating last season of 25. And just, I mean, we talked about it in our cornerback ranking show, which you should go back and listen to if you haven't. His ability to read the game and be a step ahead of everything is wild for a cornerback.
Man, I kind of like this for the Raiders.
Yeah.
I like that move, and it's all because 4 quarterbacks go in the top 6. I am curious on draft night if that does actually happen. This is crazy. It'll never happen. Will there actually be 4 quarterbacks that go? I tend to believe maybe it's 3 and somebody drops.
It is. Because we talked ourselves into this a couple of times in the past. Like, quarterbacks always get pushed up, and then sometimes it doesn't happen. And there's definitely a scenario, multiple in fact, where 3 quarterbacks go in the top 4, where they go 1, 2, 3, 4. Like it's easily doable. But if I don't love CJ Stroud and other people don't love Will Levis and some people are not going to love Bryce Young's size, like it also feels easy to imagine 2 of them slipping.
Here's why I think quarterbacks could slip. I don't think people treat the quarterback position the way we discuss it, right? Because we've talked about the Raiders who just signed Jimmy Garoppolo as a QB-needy team. But I don't know if they view that of themselves. I don't know if the Falcons really view themselves as a QB-needy team. Are they really convincing themselves, of course we have to give Desmond Ridder 1 more year. We have to give him a shot, right? Are the Commanders actually thinking, of course we have to give Sam Howell a proper shot. We would never trade up from 15 to go get QB 3 or 4. We already have Sam Howell. So I don't think the teams view themselves as QB needy, even though you and I and a lot of people at PFF say if you don't have a top 8 guy, you're always QB needy. You should always be. I don't know if the Lions think that they really need a quarterback. They have Jared Goff, right? Where we would say, hey, you've got 2 first-round picks. Maybe use one of those on a quarterback and look to the future and, take that swing while you have Goff as a bridge. So that's where I think when it comes down to draft night, there are 3 teams at the top who legitimately need a quarterback at 2, right? 2, 4, 2 and 4. Like there's 2, and then I don't know beyond that.
Well, I also think that
1, 2, and 4 all need a quarterback. There's your 3. There's a chance that the 4th quarterback does drop.
I also think that we tend to view it as if you need a quarterback, you need to take one, even if you have no confidence that that guy can be the guy, right? So my pick of Richardson at number 1 was the ceiling he has of being a true franchise quarterback, home run hit, unique dude that can be amazing. And then Bryce Young, I think, is the next guy that has the best shot at doing that based off complete opposite traits, but like those kinds of things. Do I think that there's a world where Will Levis or CJ Stroud can become an elite NFL quarterback? Probably not. So if you don't think there's a chance that those guys can be that, then why would you take them at all? So I think there's a lot of NFL teams view it through that lens of, does this guy have, like that grading system you always see, this guy's a 6.3. There's these abstract numbers between 1 and 10 somewhere, or 1 and 7 or whatever it is, weird scale. But they sort of specifically explain those as, high-end starter, capable starter, backup, whatever. You're not going to have a high-end grade on a couple of these guys. And if you don't think that they fit that category, then you're just, in their world, burning a draft pick. We're just setting fire to this draft pick for a guy whose ceiling is marginal NFL starter. Why would we do that?
When the reality of it is, even if you think CJ Stroud is a low-end starter,
like
good starter.
The 10% chance that you're wrong, and he's on.
There's a percentage chance that he becomes elite. There's a percentage chance that he becomes a full-on bust, right? And you're playing and that's what people are weighing, right? And I don't know if they're actually weighing that, but that's what they should be weighing.
But right? I think that's probably why you see quarterbacks slip sometimes. Is that teams work in this sort of absolute of, we simply don't believe there's a chance that this guy is good enough that it makes sense. Whereas we would argue, well, look, if you don't have a quarterback, take the swing. Like, what have you got to lose?
It doesn't matter if you get a starting tackle or guard anyway. And the Falcons are up on the clock here at number 8, and they're probably going to take a tackle or a guard here because I can read your mock draft at pff.com.
Oh, yeah. This is the first pick, actually, that I hated the spot. Like, if you're Atlanta now and the draft has fallen this way, and you're sitting there at 8, and you need defense, no, I hate it. Because all my 3 blue-chip defenders, Anderson, Jalen Carter, Witherspoon, they're gone. I don't love any of the other defenders enough that I'm like number 8 overall. There's a couple of guys that I really liked, and I'm like, God, 8 feels rich. Or 8 feels rich, and the Falcons have kind of addressed that need already a little bit. Like Kalijah Kancey I thought about, and then I'm like, Kancey in addition to Onyemata, who they brought in free agency, in addition to Grady Jarrett, like that's a lot of similar style defensive linemen. Do they even function together? I love Brian Branch, and when we talked about him in the quote-unquote cornerback rankings, like I think he can play all positions in a defense. But I also sort of compared him to Minkah Fitzpatrick, who got that billing coming out, who ran 0.2 almost faster in the 40, and Minkah went 11. No, okay, it doesn't work that way, right? Drafts are different. It's just maybe a weaker draft, but that was gnawing at me. I'm like, can I really put Brian Branch at 8 when Minkah went 11, and he's slower, and it's like,
And a couple Falcons fans got mad at me when I gave them Brian Branch because they love Richie Grant.
I like that fit. I do like the fit, but I couldn't do it at 8. So in the end, I was like, you know what? We're going to bring in Peter Skoronski. I know we just signed we signed up one guard long term. We brought Caleb and Gary back. Maybe his future is a tackle long term, but I'm pretty sure I can plug him in right away at guard, and he's going to be really, really good. And if I can't do anything else on defense, let's make like one of these insane offenses where the offensive line is a beast. Like, let's give whoever the hell our quarterback is, Desmond Ridder or whatever else, the best chance to succeed possible. So I don't like it, but I went with Skoronski as the best option.
So he's going to slot in at guard for you?
Yes, left guard.
So it is interesting the way you just worded that, right? I mean, we have axioms here that we tend to believe. Creep back toward average. We have on the offensive line. We have shirts that even say that. It is interesting though because there's not one clean way of doing things. It's not that there's no advantage having an elite offensive line. It's just not as great as having, say, an elite receiver core, right? If you had to be elite in one spot, I would choose the receiver or my pass catchers over the offensive line. But if you're close to an elite offensive line, it might be an interesting thing to strive for, especially if you do have a Desmond Ridder at quarterback, right? A question mark. Where can you find advantages that other teams don't have? Could be an angle that the Falcons take here.
And this, by the way, is a classic example of this is where being the GM for all 32 teams comes back to bite you. Because if I was just Atlanta's GM, it's like, oh, trade out of this spot, hate it. But
yeah, of course.
Somebody's got to want to get in there, and you have the same problems. Now, maybe somebody else would be more inclined to bring in Kancey at 8, but to the point where they trade up, no.
Yeah, I mean, it's really – I think if the draft falls like this, we've talked about the pivot points in the draft being 7, 8, whatever it is. Every year it's 7 or 8. Could be 10 or 11 in a deep draft. But once you hit that pivot point, it's tough to trade out. If you want to,
right?
You would say, I would love to pick at 13 or 14 and feel pretty good about that player.
But the reason you want out is the reason nobody else wants to trade in.
Yeah, so the same thing. Skoronski at 8, you'd rather have him at 12, 13, or 14 if you're the Falcons, but you get him at 8. That puts the Bears up on the clock at 9. Skoronski was a pretty common pick for the Bears, at least for me and for others. So where are you going with the Bears here at 9?
Yeah, Skoronski's gone. I don't love the next offensive line options for them. I don't think that they make a ton of sense. You know, you're going to see, if you're following along on the PFF, the mock draft simulator or our big board, Tyree Wilson is a name that's going to be up here for a while. He's around. You know, you could have your pick of the wide receivers. I think Kancey on this defensive line, though, is the pick. Like, D-line is still a huge need for the Bears. I think Kancey is the best available defensive lineman. I love what he can do, even if he becomes, even if he remains or is always a one-dimensional player. I think that one dimension is so valuable, and he's really good at it. I think Kancey is worth a top 10 draft pick.
The next Tommy Harris here?
The next Tommy Harris.
For the Bears?
What a throwback.
Little Tommy Harris comp?
Don't hate it.
What year did he get drafted? Was he like 04, 03, 04?
Yeah.
I love watching old drafts around this time. I got to go back to my
Tommy
04
Harris,
draft.
Junior now. You know how old he is?
41.
No, he's younger than we are.
37.
39.
39.
2004, yeah.
So 04 draft. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. I haven't worked my way through the entire 04 draft. Can't wait to hear what they say about Tommy Harris when I get there.
The Eli Manning, Robert Gallery.
Disruptor. Robert Gallery, yeah, so I did get to that part of the draft. Robert Gallery, 10-year starter, safest player in the draft.
Sean Andrews.
Where'd he go?
2 picks behind, 16.
16. Where did Harris go?
14.
At 14. So there you go. Next,
good draft.
Who was the other guy? Oh, Henry Melton was the other guy that the Bears had. Your former running back, Henry Melton, turned undersized defensive tackle that became an interior disruptor for the Bears.
That was a good draft, 2004. Igor Olshansky.
Was he in the first?
No, second.
Yeah. Chargers?
Yeah.
Yeah.
San Diego Chargers.
San Diego Chargers. So much drama there. Eli Manning was just like, I'm not going to the Chargers.
Not
doing it. I don't know why. He was very upset. Anyway, Kancey going to the Bears at 9 to be the next Tommy Harris. Yes, Ed Oliver is probably the more reasonable comp here.
I love Kancey. Yeah, Ed Oliver's a better comp, and even Ed Oliver's not a great comp either because they're like the opposite player. They're very physically they're the same effectively, but Ed Oliver was not a good pass rusher in college. Kancey is an excellent pass rusher.
We explained a little bit of that away, though, right? Ed Oliver was used as a zero tech, nose tackle.
But it might have just been because he wasn't great at it.
It could be. That is one of those things, right? When you say, hey, the college didn't use this player well,
right?
Is it because
there might be a
they
reason
just
for that?
Square peg, round hole, you know, they just put him in the wrong spot, or they were like, actually, you're not as good as you should be at this particular
And the thing,
thing.
So Kancey's problem relative to other small defensive tackles is the dude has like legit T-Rex stumpy little arms, right? Which I would care more about if there was evidence of them problematically stopping his pass rush moves, but there isn't. Like, in fact, he's way ahead of the curve in terms of using his hands to defeat blocks. He's not Aaron Donald at that, who was like peerless, but he's better than most people, and he's better than most defensive tackles with significantly longer arms. Like, he uses that jump cut extremely well. He's able to get past these guys that have much longer arms than him. He doesn't very often let those guys into his pads, so I don't really care that his arms are short, and even short relative to some of these other smaller guys, Ed Oliver or Aaron Donald that we're talking about. The tape shows that guy is going to be a really impactful, disruptive interior pass rusher, and the Bears are crying out for one of those.
Oh, man. Kancey's interesting, man, because Donald fell to 13 back in 2014. 13 or 14.
Yeah.
That was he should have obviously gone top 5. People knew that. They were scared of his height.
Yeah.
A few years later, Ed Oliver did buck that trend. Ed Oliver's been okay. He's been pretty good. I don't know if the NFL is as keen for the 280-pound, the 6-foot, 280-pound defensive tackle. I don't know if the NFL wants Kalijah Kancey in the top 10. I don't know if they're going to put him there. Mm-hmm. I've seen him, I think, I tried not to look at too much other stuff to get swayed, but I see him in the 20s a lot. So we might end up being higher on Kancey. But, of course, as I mentioned, Mel Kiper was the first one to put him at the top 10, so who knows?
And it's also, we're in this world, we've reached the point in the draft now where, I hated this spot for Atlanta pick before. You're in this spot now where you're going to have to take somebody. Like, you might not love it. You might not think this is the best fit, but, like, what are your alternatives? Give me a better option here. Now, you might argue one, but I don't think that there's a better option for Chicago than Kalijah Kancey, which is obviously why I drafted him here.
My quick point here. This is also the point in the draft. We saw Minnesota trade from 12 last year to 30. This is where some really analytically inclined teams are looking at the draft. They're factoring in contract value and everything and saying the drop-off from players, just on-field performance, between 10 and 30 is not all that drastic in certain drafts. In other drafts, I think they might be saying, hey, you can get Micah Parsons here, right? Mm-hmm. It might be worth it in the top 10.
Yeah. And
but
again,
this feels like one of those drafts where the drop-off between 12 and 30 is not drastic. And when you factor in the contract value and how much more you're paying, there's a lot of teams that are going to want to trade down here. Yes. I don't know if there's going to be trade partners to come up, but there's always a couple teams, right? There's always a Saints. There's always a team that likes to be really aggressive. So I think if we were GMs here, we'd be absolutely looking to make a trade down.
The next half a dozen teams in the next 10 or whatever are going to be looking to trade back, but you're going to need a trade partner for that to happen, and I never found one.
You never found one because you're the other GMs.
Right.
Eagles at 10. Everybody's giving them defensive line. Where are you going here?
I went with your guy, Brian Branch.
I haven't seen this yet, and I love it. I mean, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson's out, and Brian, right?
Yeah.
He's out. Yeah, he's in Detroit. Brian Branch in as a replacement?
It wouldn't take a lot for you to convince me that Brian Branch belongs in the blue chip conversation of defensive players. If he ran, a tenth of a second faster in the 40, which sounds stupid, but maybe matters. If he ran just a little bit faster, I think I'd be sold. But that guy is good at everything. He technically played the slot, but it's this weird role that doesn't really exist in the NFL. But the closest it came to existing is Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, who the Eagles had. Now, they moved him from the slot to safety a little bit. But the point being, Branch just brings that kind of versatility and true versatility of being able to do them both well as opposed to just doing them badly in different spots. This is a team that expects to be playing in February. And in February, you might need to move a defensive back from corner to safety or back again or somebody to the slot that isn't supposed to be there, whatever. Brian Branch being added to your secondary gives you a lot of options, gives you a lot of plans B, C, D, and E. And that's, I think, very valuable for a team that expects to be playing at the sharp end of the season.
Before, people tell me Howie would never do this. Howie only takes the big boys in the first round. And there's a historical precedent. Howie Roseman's going to took Jordan Davis last year, defensive tackle. He takes offensive linemen. He takes edge defenders. This would be a little bit different going to the defensive backfield for the Eagles. But I think to your point, slot and safety are both needs for the Eagles. Branch could legitimately fill both, not at the same time, but you played Tyrann Mathieu style, right? Tyrann Mathieu plays free safety on early downs, steps up and covers the slot on late downs as a zone-heavy team like Philadelphia is. Branch's instincts and all that stuff are just unbelievable. Tackling, he's good, man. Yep. I would take Brian Branch in the top 10, absolutely, and I like this pick for the Eagles.
I really do. I think he's, as I say, it wouldn't take much for you to convince me that he belongs in that blue chip conversation as well. He is so good at pretty much everything. I genuinely think he would hold up fine playing every single position in your secondary. So for a team that already has a pretty good secondary and really just needs to build in contingency, I think that's huge.